Military history is often written as a series of grand maneuvers and technological advantages. But in the ancient world, the most successful campaigns were frequently undone not by a superior enemy, but by the personal compulsions of the victors. In 689 BC, the Assyrian king Sennacherib stood before the gates of Babylon. At the time, this was the most prestigious city on earth, a center of science, law, and theology that even the Assyrians looked to for cultural validation. Sennacherib didn't just conquer the city, he attempted to delete it. He ordered the systematic destruction of its temples and houses, followed by the active flooding of the ruins with water from the Euphrates, intending to turn the world's intellectual capital into a swamp. This total annihilation looked like a definitive triumph. Instead, it triggered a rapid internal decay that dismantled the Assyrian Empire within a few generations. Sennacherib's reign was defined by the shadow of his father, Sargon II, who vanished in battle. To the Assyrians, an unburied king was a sign of a divine curse, leaving Sennacherib with a desperate need to demonstrate his own absolute authority. He spent his career distancing himself from his father's failure. He built Nineveh into a massive, highly engineered fortress. Filled with lush parks and complex aqueducts, an unprecedented architectural display designed to show he was favored by the gods. Despite Nineveh's scale, the old elite in Babylon remained unimpressed. They viewed themselves as the true guardians of Mesopotamian civilization and routinely challenged Assyrian dominance. When the Babylonians captured Sennacherib's eldest son and delivered him to his executioners, the king's strategic logic collapsed into a desire for personal revenge. During the final siege, he committed a crime that horrified his own subjects. He entered the sacred inner sanctum and kidnapped the golden statue of Marduk, the patron deity of the city. Sennacherib prioritized his immediate emotional release over the long-term stability of his throne, ignoring the specialized social structures that held his empire together. Imperial stability relies on a balance between two forces: the steel required to hold territory, and the belief systems required to make that rule feel legitimate to the governed. By destroying Babylon's temples and stealing their god, Sennacherib effectively severed his own moral authority. He alienated the scholars and priests who managed the empire's bureaucracy, leaving his rule supported only by the threat of violence. A more calculating leader might have chosen a different path, using Babylon's prestige to strengthen the Assyrian crown. If Sennacherib had declared himself the protector of Babylonian culture, he could have consolidated these regions into a unified, stable superpower, controlling the entire trade corridor between the Mediterranean and the Persian Gulf. A stable center would have likely prevented the rise of the peripheral groups that eventually overran the region. In this scenario, the small city-states of the Mediterranean would have remained minor provinces on the edge of a dominant Mesopotamian state. This would have ensured that cuneiform, rather than the alphabets that developed later in the West, remained the primary system for law and science across the Near East for centuries. Sennacherib's focus on short-term retribution destroyed this possibility, ensuring that the Assyrian system would have no internal resilience when the next crisis arrived. The consequences were immediate. By demonstrating that sacred laws and cultural traditions were optional, Sennacherib signaled to his own inner circle that the king's life was also negotiable. He was murdered by his own sons 8 years after his victory in Babylon. The lack of cultural unity meant the empire could not survive a succession crisis. Within 80 years, the Assyrian state, the most formidable military force in history to that point, completely disappeared. This collapse created a massive power vacuum. As the Mesopotamian center gave way, it allowed for the emergence of new powers in Persia and the Mediterranean, shifting the focus of world history toward the West. Modern leaders often attempt to disrupt established systems while ignoring the foundations those systems are built on. Like Sennacherib, they find that tearing down a competitor's structure is easy, but managing the resulting chaos is nearly impossible. You cannot replace a culture's identity with the sheer force of your will. Destroying a symbol often gives it a new, more dangerous life as a focal point for resistance. Lasting power isn't found in the ability to burn a city to the ground. It is found in the ability to build a system where your enemies eventually see your leadership as essential to their own prosperity.